After breakfast, Lucius led Sonoria to the royal library, navigating the elegant hallways with ease until they reached a pair of mahogany doors carved with flying crows. Pushing them open, he gestured grandly for Sonoria to enter, eager to see her reaction. Her chocolate eyes widened in awe at the sheer amount of tomes within, a hand absently adjusting her glasses as she stepped inside. Immediately, she moved forward to inspect the titles on the spines in search of books on symbolism, only for her expression to shift with confusion. Slowly, she moved from shelf to shelf, her confusion seeming to grow deeper before she pulled a book from one of the shelves. Opening it, she let out a frustrated sigh of resignation. "What is it, dear one?" Lucius asked, with a hint of concern. His chest ached as she met his gaze with a pleading disappointment. "I can't read them," she admitted, her voice almost vulnerable. "I don't recognize the language." Now it was Lucius' turn to be confused, his brow furrowing as he stepped closer with his arms crossed over his chest. "What do you mean you don't recognize the language?" he asked, his head tilting curiously as he searched her expression. "You've been speaking it." Sonoria's expression of bewilderment would have been comical if not for the situation. "What do you mean I've been speaking it?" she asked incredulously. "The only language I speak fluently is English." Lucius had never heard of such a language before. "English?" he echoed in confusion, tasting the word on his tongue. Sonoria pinched her chin, seeming to consider something with great confusion. When she spoke again, it sounded like gibberish to Prince Lucius, and he looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "You didn't understand what I just said, did you?" Sonoria asked slowly, seeming to be listening carefully to how the two languages sounded as she switched back to the tongue he understood. Lucius shook his head, perplexed. "No? What did you say?" "I said, this is what English sounds like," she replied, glancing toward the shelves of books. "How can I speak a language I've never even heard of, but not read it? That makes no sense." She hummed curiously before her chocolate eyes searched Lucius' expression. "Can I ask what magical being the people of Everland are?" she asked carefully, as if afraid of coming off as offensive. Lucius let out an amused huff, a hint of a smirk pulling at his lips. "The people of Everland are Eldarian, of course." She gave him an unamused look that made Lucius want to laugh. "Yeah, I got that," Sonoria said flatly. "But I meant their race, as in elves, fae, pixies." This time, Lucius did chuckle, finding her reaction endearing. "The Eldarians are a race descended from the union of dragons and elves." Sonoria's expression shifted with realization as she murmured to herself. "Dragons. Did you figure something out?" Lucius raised a curious eyebrow. "Maybe," she replied, placing the book back on the shelf. "I'll have to see if Elric can confirm it for me first." A pause as she glanced around at the books she couldn't read. "For now, I'll need your help to find the symbols from my dream, since I can't read any of these books." "Of course, my love," Lucius said, feeling a sense of affection and satisfaction at knowing she was relying on him for something so important to her. Stepping forward, he began searching the spines for a tome about symbolism. "Perhaps while I'm looking, you could describe the dream you had," he suggested, fingers gently tracing the titles before he noticed the way her expression shifted with worry. Eyes darting away, Sonoria bit her lip as she adjusted her glasses. The sight of her nervous worry made Lucius' chest tighten, but before he could ask, she began to speak in a careful tone. "Let me start with this. Most dreams are not literal," she told Lucius, meeting his eyes with an empathetic worry. They are typically symbolic. Okay. Lucius nodded slowly, pulling a book from the shelf, his concern growing. My love, what did you see that has you so worried? Sonoria took a deep breath, as if to brace herself before explaining, her tone gentle with worry and empathy. I saw the war, she said quietly, the words sending a jolt of worry through Lucius. There were beings of all kind united against shadows who fought using something akin to Gundam suits. Dragons, elves, vampires, everything. The oldest dragon was killed in battle, and a younger dragon reacted with fury. He let out a roar before sending a wave of fire toward the enemy. That only caused the enemy's weapons to explode. The damage was much worse than it should have been. There were nightshade and lotus petals falling like snow all around. Then there was a wall, broken and crumbling, with these words written in a language I don't quite recognize. It's similar to the Eldarian in these books, but different at the same time. A wave of ice-cold fear washed over Lucius, and he took a step closer, trying to keep his expression neutral. Can you describe the older dragon? He asked, forcing a calm tone. Please. He knew, even before she began. He was red, deep like wine. Sonoria began, a hand rubbing the back of her neck as she looked away. Covered in scars, kind of the way you can tell a tree is old. There was a bit of fading around the edges of his scales. That's my father's dragon form, Lucius said, his jaw tightening with worry. Deaths aren't literal, not in dreams, Lucius, Sonoria said, shaking her head with a look of empathy. They usually mean the end of a cycle or a change in perspective. Very rarely do they predict actual death. Lucius forced a slow breath through his nose. He knew she was right, but he couldn't help the knot of worry forming in his abdomen. The words, he said, forcing himself to focus his attention on the other details. Do you think you could write them? Sonoria considered it for a moment before reaching into a bag she kept with her. It was a white bag, printed with a raven atop a skull, strange pens adorning it that looked like tiny paintings of various men that Lucius couldn't help wondering about. Were they friends? Past lovers? He pushed the thought aside, making a mental note to ask later as she brought out a tiny notebook and a fountain pen. He was a bit taken aback when he saw that she didn't have to dip the nib into a pot of ink, waiting patiently as she slowly began to sketch the words. He recognized the language immediately. That's archaic. Lucius spoke up, eyes widening in wonder before worry crept in again. You can read it, Sonoria asked almost hopefully, before worry took over as she noticed his expression. What does it mean? Lucius gently took the notebook from her hands, pointing to each word in archaic Eldarian as he spoke their meanings aloud. Prophecy, sacrifice, binding oath, death, rebirth. Sonoria seemed to think for a moment, almost like she was processing this, before pain filled her features with a reverent gratitude beneath. I understand it now, she whispered, voice trembling with an emotion that made Lucius' chest tighten. She let out a resigned sigh of acceptance before explaining. The entire dream went together as one message. Well, two messages. One, the Phoenix is meant to bring a change in perspective, the acceptance of duality, and two, I, as the Phoenix, have a lot of sacrifice to make.